On behalf of the Salt Lake Chamber, we welcome you to Congressional District 3 Candidate Forum. This is part of our series of candidate forums covering all major races that are taking place in the state of Utah this year. And we invite you to join us for each of these forums. There's more information on our website at slchamber.com. That's slchamber.com. I'm Allie Isom. I'm Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer for Clyde Companies. And I am the vice chair or the policy co-chair for the Salt Lake Chamber this year. I'm joined by my co-host, who is Nate Callister, board chair of the Salt Lake City Chamber, a market executive and head of Utah Commercial Banking at Wells Fargo. We're streaming live today from the Chamber offices.
Thank you, Allie. This forum will focus on issues that are important to the business community. Each candidate will have approximately 30 minutes to answer the questions. The number of questions each candidate responds to will depend on the length of their answers. So without further ado, let me introduce our first candidate. Please welcome Dr. Mike Kennedy, the Republican candidate for Congressional District 3. Dr. Kennedy, welcome and thank you for being here with us today. Could you begin by telling our viewers a little bit about yourself and why are you running for Congress?
Thanks for having me, Nate and Allie. It's great to be here. It's a great venue. I have a beautiful view that the viewers can't see, but it's going to be distracting to try to attend to you while I've got a beautiful view of the city. But I'm Mike Kennedy. I'm running for United States Congress, and I'd be honored to earn your support. I'm a family doctor professionally. For 25 years, I've done that, and it's been my privilege to serve the people of Utah in that capacity, trying to help them on their day-to-day healthcare needs. I'm also an attorney. I graduated from law school and have passed the bar, but I don't practice the law, so you can't hold that against me. But I'm also a father of 8 children and grandfather of 9 children, and I'm really grateful to have that very key aspect of this campaign, and that's I'm looking to the 50 and 100-year horizon. How do we make the world a better place so that our children and grandchildren actually have a better chance to live the American dream than you and I did? And so the business community has been outstanding to help me through this campaign. It's been my privilege also to be a small business owner of my medical practice. And I know how hard it can be to make ends meet, make payroll, try to keep the business moving when it feels like government is weaponized against us in some cases. So love to engage with you on that level. And if you choose me to be your congressman, I can guarantee I'll fight on a regular basis trying to get the barriers out of the way and let those that know how to do these things do the things that they should do. And thank you for the business community and the amazing work that you do into the Chamber. The Salt Lake Chamber has been an outstanding servant of the people in the business community and my state legislative service. And I look forward, if you're willing to select me, to serving you as a congressman in this capacity as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Our first question is, with the growing population and rising housing costs in the state of Utah, what is it that you see happening best at the federal level? What can you do about affordable housing and the housing crisis in Utah?
Yeah, it's a massive issue, and I do have 4 married children of the 8 children that we have, and it's a fascinating problem that we have, that my children are having a hard time finding and buying houses here in the state of Utah. And when it comes to affordable housing, it's a personal issue as well as a congressional issue. So these issues, I think, first are best dealt with on the state level. When it comes to the United States Congress, I find them to be feckless on multiple levels, and when they think that they're doing something good, often they get in the way and create more problems than they intend to, whether that's their intent or not always is not clear, because there are people that seem to just want to get in the way because they can get in the way. So there are things, though, that I think Congress can do, but as a state legislator for the past 10 years, I was 6 years in the House, I served for 4 years in the Senate. I believe that actually the state has better answers for these things than the federal government. That's my first statement. And when it comes to that, for Allie and Nate and those that you represent, I want to make sure that the state is empowered to do those things that it can do, that the business community can respond, that our developers, the the builders that are in this state, that they can do those things that they need to, instead of the federal government coming in and puppetizing or trying to control the process. So I was reading recently about the natural gas ban in California and the fact that you can't build a house with natural gas now in the state of California, and that raises the cost of housing by thousands of dollars for these houses that are trying to be built. And that's from Gavin Newsom and the California Progressive Legislature, who's telling people what they can use in their houses and what they can't. That's an example of what we shouldn't do in the state of Utah. When it comes to the climate and our interest in trying to protect the climate, I don't know anybody in this state that wants poisoned air and poisoned water. And when it comes to that, we can do it well in the state of Utah. But I believe, as an example, for the state of Utah, Senator Mike Lee actually has the Houses Act, which is an outstanding policy that's a reflection of where the federal government could get out of the way to potentially help. If you're not familiar with the Houses Act, what he proposes is that a community, a contiguous community to federal land, and all of us know over 60% of our land in the state of Utah is controlled by the federal government, and that a contiguous community could purchase for housing reasons contiguous land that is federal land and use it for housing purposes, as well as infrastructure, as well as, of course, the necessary accoutrements that would come along with that. And that would allow us to utilize small segments of our federal land so that we could actually build houses. That's one of our housing problems that we have, is we're landlocked. We're surrounded by all this federal land that is unused, lies fallow, and it could be used for housing needs for our citizens. So I'm supportive of Senator Mike Lee's Houses Act. I think that would be helpful. In addition to the taxes on these building materials, we should lower those taxes on building materials so that the government once again gets out of the way, so that building materials are cheaper. And finally, if there's regulations that are in the way that are costing us more than they're benefiting us, get those regulations out of the way. I do feel like a lot of people that pass these regulations, they don't understand the real issues on the ground level like we do of what those ideologies do when we raise the prices of our houses so that we don't have people that can get housed. And so as a result, I think mostly the answer is get the government out of the way, and we'll actually improve the affordability. Although the final thing I'll say is Utah's got a good problem, and that is people want to live here. And a part of that is because of the amazing people in Utah. And I want people to be able to come here, but I hope they're not bringing their ideologies that create more problems associated with the housing crisis, because we do have a housing crisis in this state. And I want to try to fix that wherever I can.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So next question's around healthcare costs. Rising healthcare costs are obviously a significant burden to businesses, to employees, to all of us. What solutions do you propose to make healthcare more affordable?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question because as a family doctor, as I mentioned for all these years, preventative care is a fundamental component of what I have focused on for 25 years professionally. And for example, we talk a lot about abortion, unwanted pregnancies, and how about we talk about healthcare long before the problem develops? And actually, my policies in the state legislature, and if you select me for Congress, then it would be the same, is we need to look well ahead of the actual problem to try to find the solution. So in the case of unwanted pregnancies and then the challenge of abortions or not and so on, is we need to make sure that women's health care is attended to properly, and that we've actually passed laws in the state of Utah to make birth control more easily available, that you can buy it over the counter without a doctor's prescription. And I'm deeply in support of those kind of opportunities. Intrauterine devices as well as Nexplanon are products that can be used to help prevent pregnancies when women want to take control of their health care, that they can do that with these devices. We need to make them easily available. When it comes to healthcare, there is so much attending to the tertiary issue of the heart attack and stroke. And if we looked 20 or 30 years before that and try to prevent the heart attack and stroke by addressing the sleep apnea, by addressing the diabetes, when it's small and when it's not impactful, instead of amputating toes and feet, we can address the diabetes long before that and make sure that their sugars are well controlled. And it's a bit of a joke to think about these weight loss drugs. You've heard of the Mounjaros and the Ozempics, and it's almost like, yeah, those can solve a lot of problems too, but they're extremely expensive. And here's a really interesting point about those medicines that many people are using cosmetically, but they're really powerful for diabetics particularly, is that when we use those kind of medicines early and we prevent people from actually having the complications associated with diabetes and the obesity that can lead to a lot of problems, then we ultimately save money on the strokes and the heart attacks many years later. So I am deeply invested in making sure healthcare costs are kept at a minimum, and for that, prevention is the name of the game. We should be looking well ahead of the problem. And before we have a suicidal patient or individual who's suicidal, we should be talking about their anxiety and depression and trying to resolve those issues long before. So as a practiced clinician, I would love to bring my skill set to Congress to help advocate for those preventative solutions that would actually help us save money in common sense ways. Because who wants people that are suicidal? Who wants people with unwanted pregnancies? Who wants a heart attack or a stroke? And as a doctor I was just in the office yesterday. I ordered 5 to 7 mammograms. On a regular basis, I'm ordering mammograms and colonoscopies. I'm trying to keep the diabetes under control, because when we deal with these things on a small level, we won't have big problems later. So with the business community, we can work together to try to find those solutions. I've already got lots of ideas and would love to engage with you and other solutions so we can make sure that we're preventing those expensive problems by dealing with it well ahead and when it's cheap and easy to do.
Dr. Kennedy, businesses in Utah are facing increasing regulatory pressure to adopt more sustainable practices, from construction operations to everyday energy use. What federal approach would you propose to help Utah's companies transition to more sustainable practices?
I am a big fan of clean air and water, as I've already mentioned, and I believe the people in Utah have the capacity to do these things. Energy is the lifeblood of our society. In fact, electricity, which I'm a big fan of electrification wherever we can do it. Electricity is what is the very fundamental power that allows me to even speak to you right now. My heart is beating, your heart is beating because of electricity in our hearts, in our nerves that innervate and allow us to activate and do the things we do. I am a big fan of electricity because electricity is what actually helps us walk and move in this world. And it's the same for society. When we have cheap and deployable energy, we can do almost anything. So in the state of Utah, we have some of the cheapest power around the country. And part of that is because we have an all hands on deck, all of the above energy solution opportunity. When it comes to my friends in the Uinta Basin, they know how to gain energy, whether it's natural gas or oil. And of course, we have wind and solar. And I'm also a big fan of nuclear, is that we can leverage all of these resources, and geothermal is another, that we can utilize. And when we have cheap and deployable energy, we can actually help ourselves along the Wasatch Front. We all know that the inversions come every winter time. The polluted air is something that we all deal with individually, and I deal with professionally. I have the patients that come in and they're struggling to breathe during the inversion times of the year. And the forest fires have been devastating for the West. The East doesn't seem to care about it until it's on the East Coast a year or two ago that there was a bunch of fire smoke coming out of Canada into Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden the front page news of all the Eastern news media outlets were talking about how terrible it is. Every year we've been dealing with that for all too long. So we need to, of course, manage our natural resources. When it comes to the federal lands, Utahns can manage those lands, and we can develop the energy resources so that we can actually use clean and deployable energy. And I envision Utah, long after my lifetime and other lifetimes, is Utah should be ground zero for energy development for the whole country. We are well suited in the form of oil and natural gas, including wind and solar, and nuclear, once again, as a powerful and clean resource that we could use and send energy all over this country. The final thing I'll say to that really great question is, I look at the heart, kind of like I've already talked about. The heart is the center of energy. It's one place in our body that sends energy all over our body. And I look at the Mountain West as the heart for the whole United States of America. If we could develop nuclear power plants and other energy resources here in the West, we could send clean energy all over the country, allowing us to electrify, subsequently reducing our pollution at the same time that we need to manage our natural lands, and we need to have healthy forestry efforts to make sure we manage our lands. And frankly, I support our efforts that Utahns should manage those lands, not the federal government, who often doesn't do it well.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Kennedy, you mentioned earlier that tremendous growth that is taking place and will continue to take place in this state. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about infrastructure investment. What are some infrastructure investments you believe are critical for supporting this growth, this business growth in our state?
I'll speak to this community, and I look forward to working with you and the Olympics in 10 years. It's a massive issue, and we need money and resources today to start tomorrow to build the infrastructure necessary for the Olympics. And I'll say as your congressman that I am deeply invested in appropriate infrastructure. This state has a good problem to have. It is that a lot of people want to come to this state, and they're good people, and I want them to be able to come. In fact, I am also an immigrant to this state myself and have been privileged to raise my family here. So we want people to come, but we need roads. We need access to clean water. We need to make sure that we have the energy infrastructure so energy is cheap, and that if people choose to buy electric vehicles, that they can actually buy them and use them in an easy fashion when we have cheap electrical costs. And so the infrastructure that I would look at and that I would support and also work with the business community to make sure that we're doing it in the right way is making sure that we have cheap and deployable energy, making sure that we have the roads that are necessary but not overbuilt. In fact, I've heard talk about the Olympics that we can have air taxis, that instead of always planting on the ground more footprint for these roads, is that potentially building to building in various venues, we could actually fly. And within the next decade, is that possible? I don't know, but I do see drones all over the place. The idea of taking to the air in a safe and effective fashion is exciting to me, because infrastructure that we think of today, well, let's just lay down more concrete and let's build more pipes and such, and we need more wires to connect ourselves. Well, some of that might be entirely outdated by the next decade as we look forward. So I want to leverage the potency of the people of Utah, and I want to make sure that we have infrastructure, much as our pioneer forebears for generations looked ahead. They developed infrastructure for us that we enjoy today. We don't even attribute to those people necessarily the benefits they brought to us. We need to have have a 50 and 100-year horizon to look ahead to build the infrastructure today, and I'm deeply focused on making sure that we have that infrastructure so that people long in the future have cheap energy that's available, as well as the clean water and the transportation access that they need so that they can get around and move.
Thank you.
Dr. Kennedy, Congress seems to be at an impasse when it comes to immigration reform. It seems to be nobody wants to step up with the hard answers to a big, thorny problem. For Utah's businesses, this is a workforce issue for us. At Clyde Companies, we use H-2B visa programs, and we'd love to see that lottery expanded. But what else do you think can be done by Congress that doesn't even seem to want to tackle it? And is there any difference that you can make or plan to make on behalf of the state of Utah when it comes to immigration?
The H-2B visas, thank you for lobbying me on that today, Allie. I entirely agree with that, as there are people all over the world that want to come to the United States of America to work. And I'll add to that the fact that my dad is a naturalized American citizen. I'm proud to be a first-generation American on my father's side. The benefit of the United States of America for generations has been that people have come here with unique skill sets and benefited us for generations as a result of their contribution to our society. So my first response to that is we need to have a secure border. Our border has been entirely mismanaged by the Biden administration. We can't have undocumented individuals. We don't even know why they're coming or who they are. We can't have people flowing across our border. No country that I'm aware of allows that to happen. If you want to work in another country in Europe, you have to go through the legal methods to get there. Or many other countries that I've had patients and also friends tell me, you can't just go there and set up shop and start working in other countries. They have control of those types of things. The United States of America needs to seal its border and control its border. In addition, we need to have easier legal immigration than illegal immigration. And I am very focused on that. I think in this room today, we have the answers. It's not that hard to solve this problem. What we need is to build a political collaboration, a consensus to agree to work on this. What I get concerned about, Allie and Nate, and to the business community, is there are too many people in Washington, D.C. that are fundraising off of the human crisis that's happening at our border. The sex trafficking, the fentanyl that's coming across our border are reprehensible, and we should fight tooth and nail to prevent those terrible things from happening on the border of the greatest country the United States of America and the history of the planet. So I want to work, as I've done in the state legislature, I want to work to build a coalition, to build a consensus, to find those people that are reasonable and thoughtful, that it's just a matter of stopping the flow of people that are illegal and opening the doors of legal people that have skills and want to work here. We can do this. We have done this historically in the past, but for some reason in the past 40 years, we've lost control of this process. I don't think it's that hard, but what I need is if you people would select me as a thoughtful, reasonable person who wants to solve these problems, I need to find like-minded individuals in Congress, and I hope that I can find them, people that really want to solve problems. And I'll just say, I don't care if they're Democrat or Republican, if you've got a good idea, I want people to come to me, that we can work together as congressmen to try to make these things happen. Of course, I need the President of the United States, whoever it is, to sign the bill that we might put forward. I think there are answers that are out there. These answers are not that hard to think of. What we need is a political will to address this. And if I can't address it on an immigration basis, I will address it on a workforce basis. I don't think anybody with superior skills all over the world should be prevented from having an opportunity to apply to work in the United States of America. If there's a business that wants to sponsor this individual, and this individual has the capacity to work in that area, whether it's high tech or low tech, I'm supportive of facilitating that process, but they need to come here legally.
Okay, thank you.
So, Dr. Kennedy, we can't have a business forum discussion without talking a little bit about taxes.
Absolutely.
Tax
I
reform.
hope we can.
So I want to make sure I give you that opportunity. What changes to federal tax policies would you implement to make Utah more attractive to businesses, but also balancing that with the needs of public services?
As a state senator and also as a representative, I'm proud to stand on $1 billion tax cut that we put on the state of Utah over the past year or two, working with Senate President Adams, Speaker Mike Schultz. Is we are a business-friendly state, and a big part of that is we don't fight our business community. We are not trying to prevent them from being able to do what they should do. We have regulations, and regulations are appropriate, but we are not going to punish them with excessive taxes. And so that $1 billion tax cut that we can bring to the people and to the business community, I'm proud of that fact, and we need to enhance that on the federal level. The federal government, the Trump tax cuts are set to expire in 2025. I've already been told as a possible congressman that next year is the year of the tax. I'll say on a side note, I don't know, because Ukraine and Israel, we got firing wars in the Middle East. Next year might be the year of the war. I hope not, but it's really sad to watch those terrible things happening all over our world. But if next year does turn into the year of the tax, I want to make permanent the Trump tax cuts. I believe that those tax cuts are an important incentive for communities to for our business community to bring their resources back to the United States, to manufacture here in the United States. So everywhere I can, I want to cut taxes and make sure our business community is held harmless from the offensive burdens that are often placed on them with excessive tax rates. We need to compete not only state to state in this country, but we need to compete all over the world. And if our tax rates are excessively high, we'll find ourselves with businesses that have the choice fleeing to other countries. And so I support the Trump tax cuts and want to make those permanent. That's one of the things that I know is going to happen. I'll also say Congressman Blake Moore is a very effective member of House Ways and Means. I'm impressed and excited to work with him to try to find every other opportunity that we can enhance the tax code for our business community and make sure that they are paying their fair share. We all know that they should, and we all do as individuals, but that our business community is also unfettered by the tax code and can go ahead and do the work that it should do. So cut taxes the way I've done it on the state legislature is a primary thing that I'd focus on in the federal government as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Dr. Kennedy, I have a follow-up question. You referenced the conflict in Ukraine and Israel. What's your position on the U.S. foreign relations? How involved as a peacekeeper in the world should this country be?
Thanks for that question, Allie, because I've been doing this we've been campaigning for a year, and it's very rare that I get people that ask about the international conflicts that we have. And I'm really concerned that maybe we aren't thinking about it as much as we should. I think it's a vital part because war, I'll just summarize my general sense on war. I call it the devil's playground. Every bad thing against humanity you can think of, disease and of course, murder and rape and so on. Every bad thing against humanity happens in war. It's the devil's playground. It's nothing but terrible things that happen during war. So my My philosophy on that is Teddy Roosevelt's philosophy: speak softly, carry a big stick. I think that's important for us. The United States of America, when Joe Biden in a feckless fashion withdrew from Afghanistan, sent a message to dictators, brutal dictators all over the world, that the United States of America was asleep and ready to let people move if they were going to move. Since that time, we've had conflagrations throughout the world. I'm very disturbed about China's recent blockade. Their blockade of Taiwan. They're practicing blockading Taiwan. And we should do, in the United States of America, we have all the resources necessary to sell to Taiwan all the resources necessary so they can speak softly and carry a big stick. Prevention is the name of the game. We should focus on empowering our allies all over the world, and that is not sending money we don't have. I'm very disturbed about our national debt, and we don't have money to fight wars or pay for other people's wars, but we can sell them all the resources. And when it comes to Ukraine, I'm a big fan of seizing Russian assets and make Russia pay for the war that has started with Ukraine. So when it comes to Israel, they're our best ally in the Middle East, and I stand firmly with Israel. I also don't want Palestinians or innocents to suffer as a result of their innocent just living in a certain area. But the terrorists throughout the world should know the United States of America is a strong ally and will stand firmly for freedom. And as a congressman, absolutely, I'd support our best allies throughout the world. And that's also good for our economy, is when we're willing to empower our allies by selling to them the resources, for example, that Taiwan needs so that it can speak strongly against China's threats to take that place over. I think that's not only good for Taiwan, good for freedom, but it's also good for our economy and our industries, some of which reside in Utah, that are actually making these outstanding devices that help defend these countries throughout the world.
Thank you.
Dr. Kennedy, I think we have a couple minutes left. Is there anything else you would like to share with our business community?
I was talking with Ali and Nate a little earlier, and I'll just say to the Salt Lake Chamber, thanks again. The best part of running campaigns, and they're challenging, and it's my privilege to offer myself to you good people, but the best part of running campaigns is being able to meet the people and hearing their issues and trying to think through, what is it I could do in the position that you would hopefully choose me for, that I could help you in getting out of the way, and when we need to regulate in the government, that we do it in a way that's helpful, not hurtful. So I just want you to know, as a small business owner, as a state legislator who's worked policy for the past decade, trying to find solutions on all sides of the issue. I listen to people on all sides of the issue. I try to find where's the common ground. And then for Ali and Nate, I try to find where is it we can build a coalition and make this successful for everybody. I recognize, if we want to use the football analogy, we can't throw a touchdown pass every time. Every idea is not going to fly. I recognize work in policy, even if I've got a great idea that I know is actually useful, I can't make people move if they're not going to, one way or the other. So if I can get 3 yards instead of a touchdown pass, I will do that. And I recognize we're in this all together. With that 50 and 100-year horizon, I hope you would give me the opportunity to serve as your congressman. And if you choose me that way, I would love to listen to you and try to find the ways that we can actually resolve these issues, so you can do the good work that you can do, and that we can bring more Utah to Washington instead of Washington to Utah. That's my focus, and I will work vigorously, if you select me for this position, to make sure that we're doing that throughout the period of time that I can serve you. So I'm Mike Kennedy. You can find out more about me at MikeKennedyForUtah.com. I'd be honored to have your support. One way or the other, let's work together to try to make this place as good as we can make it. And Utah does it well. I want to imitate a lot of what we've done here.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. We appreciate you sharing your perspectives and your approach to leadership and governance with the Salt Lake Chamber this afternoon, and we wish you the best in your campaign.
Thanks for having me.
And with that, we will take a short break and reconvene with Glenn Wright.
Thank you. Now, please welcome Glenn Wright, the Democratic candidate for Congressional District 3. Glenn, welcome. Thank you for being here. Would you begin by telling our viewers a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to run for Congress?
Sure. I have a very varied background. I spent 6 years in the U.S. Air Force as a pilot, doing 2 combat tours in Vietnam as a forward air controller. With the drones due today, we did the small aircraft over the battlefield. After that, I was sent to Europe with a small business jet, flew NATO staff around Europe, and I was checked out as an aircraft commander flying the Berlin corridor. Flew over the Berlin Wall and the Iron Curtain. And it disappoints me to see that one of the candidates for president wants to help his war criminal buddy reestablish the Iron Curtain. It deeply offends me. After that, I spent 30 years with the Chubb Corporate Insurance Company. I was a loss control specialist, doing consultant business in the fields of fire protection, industrial safety, general liability, and product liability. Worked in Los Angeles, Boston, New Jersey, and my last 12 years I was working out of South Florida, but I was in charge of our Latin American zone. I had staff in 7 different countries and visited over 12 years, probably on the order of about 1,000 different clients, mostly in the manufacturing and mining business. After I retired, moved to Utah. I was on the board of Habitat for Humanity in Summit and Wasatch County for 6 years, where I was involved in building affordable housing. I was the board chair for 4 of those 6 years. Then I was elected to the Summit County Council. And my 2 biggest issues on the council were affordable housing and climate change issues. As part of my duties with Summit County Council, I was our representative on UAC, which is a very important political experience for me. I was frequently the only Democrat in the room with a bunch of very conservative Republican county commissioners. And we learned to get along with each other very well over those 6 years, and we formed alliances during much of our time together, especially during the 45 days of the legislative session, where we always thought the legislature was picking on all of us. Why am I running? Well, in 22, I was in my last year in the Summit County Council. I was drafted by the Democratic Party. They didn't have anybody to run against Curtis. And I agreed to do so, but I really didn't have time to campaign 2 years ago because the Summit County Council job, while it's not a full-time job, it's probably half to 3/4 time, 7 days a week. And then as we came up to 24, no one was interested in running in CD3 again. So I did it. And this time, though I'm campaigning, I had the opportunity to campaign, and I was inspired to campaign really by our national politics. I think this is a real choice election for us nationwide and in the state. We have 2 very different paths to go down. The Trump campaign, from the time he came down the escalator in 2015, has used immigration as a racist attack on a good portion of our population. And I don't think that really that doesn't go down well with the folks in Utah. The Salt Lake Chamber here was very involved, I know, with the Utah Compact. I saw how that affected our attitudes towards immigration here in Utah. And frankly, I'm surprised by the lack of attention from the people who pushed the Utah Compact. The Chamber, our political leaders, our faith leaders have not pushed back on the racist outbreaks that have come from Trump in this particular campaign. And I think that's an important thing to talk about in the campaign. So it's part of my motivation.
We're grateful to have you. And Glenn, we want to tackle some of the issues that are crucial to the state of Utah today, one of which is the rising cost of housing, the decrease in inventory that we see, and a growing population. Do you think there's anything the federal government can do to address this issue for the state of Utah?
There is, but I think we have to consider that affordable housing is an all-of-government issue. If we don't have the right zoning at the local level, we're not going to accomplish very much. I saw that in my 6 years in the Summit County Council. While I was there, we approved 500 units of affordable housing, most of which has been built. But we've also ran into some roadblocks with NIMBYs from part of Summit County. It's very difficult to zone for affordable housing. But where I think the federal government can come in is where cities and counties have good plans for affordable housing. Target grants, rather than spreading money out just generally over the housing industry, target it at cities and counties who have viable plans for affordable housing. And by doing that, let's say a grant could help a city buy land and build infrastructure. Right off the top, you're going to eliminate at least 30% of the cost of the housing. And that's a good start. I think the other thing that the federal government has to do, and we have to have comprehensive immigration reform. If you talk to builders, you'll find that we have a vast shortage of construction workers in the state, and a lot of the construction workers in the state are actually undocumented workers right now. We need to regularize their ability to work in the state, and we need to bring in more people like them on a legal basis to bolster the construction industry. If we don't have enough workers, we're not going to be able to build enough affordable housing.
Okay, thank you.
Next question is around healthcare costs. And as you know, rising healthcare costs are a significant burden not only on businesses, employees, but all of us. What solutions would you propose to help tackle this big challenge and make it more affordable?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things at the federal level we can do. Number one, if we go back to when the Affordable Care Act was passed in 2010, one of the things they talked about at that time was the public option. And it was too controversial. It never got placed in the bill. The public option would make Medicare as an option for everyone. You can buy into it. Companies could buy into it. And what that does is it brings competition to the healthcare workplace. I worked in the insurance industry for 30 years. I know what an expense ratio is in the insurance industry. The Medicare's expense ratio is about 3%. Typically in the health insurance industry, it's north of 15%. And where does that money go? High salaries, paying people to deny claims, and the more you can deny claims, or at least avoid paying claims at a certain time, you make investment money on the money you've collected from premiums. And then TV advertising. If you see a advertisement, as you see regularly now on TV, for a health insurance company, you're paying for it. That's part of that 15% expense ratio. That would immediately make the private health insurance companies more competitive and make them compete with Medicare. And the other thing is what's already been started with the Inflation Reduction Act, and that is negotiating on pharmaceutical prices. Once you get the public option and let people buy into Medicare, then that negotiation that is starting to take place for higher valued drugs will filter down to the entire healthcare market. And I think we have to accelerate that level of negotiations.
Businesses in Utah are facing increasing regulatory pressure to adopt more sustainable practices, Glenn, from construction operations to everyday energy practices. What federal approach would you propose for Utah companies to transition to more sustainable operations?
Yeah, this is a really important issue. And it's not just sustainability from a climate change standpoint, but from an air pollution standpoint. The majority of the air pollution that we see in our inversions here in the Wasatch Front is from two sources: transportation and heating. So the natural gas that is burned in our furnaces, and the gasoline that's burned and diesel that's burned in our vehicles. So incentives for for electric vehicles and heat pumps in buildings for any new construction will start to bring down the pollution that causes our inversions. Also, we need to have incentives for building efficiency. Insulate buildings better, seal them better. We're going to have a changing energy mix here in Utah. And I know we're going to talk about some other issues with the economy later, and I can talk about that later. the energy mix that we use in Utah will change over the next 20 years, and the federal government can incentivize that to happen on a faster basis. And the last thing we can do, I'm also an active member with Citizens Climate Lobby, and for years now, one of their main issues was putting a price on carbon. If we put a price on carbon, we let the economy and the market solve some of those issues for us.
Can I ask a follow-up question
Sure.
to that then? You mentioned incentives. What kind of incentives do you mean?
Yeah, well, right now we have a $7,500 incentive for new electric vehicles that are manufactured in the United States. There's also, I believe there's an incentive, I don't know the details of it, for installing heat pumps on buildings. So we need to make sure that those incentives stay in place.
As a rebate or a tax reduction?
Yeah,
or-
it's a
just-
rebate.
okay.
I just happened to buy a new EV. I got the $7,500 rebate, and it made the car very reasonably priced. I got what is considered a small to medium-sized SUV, fully electric, with 320-mile range and very good recharging capability for about $37,000, which I think is a very competitive price for a vehicle of that type.
Okay, thank you.
Spend a little bit of time talking about infrastructure investment. We know Utah is growing rapidly, will continue to grow. What infrastructure investments would you consider critical that you would like to talk about to help support this growth?
Several. I think number one, let's talk about our electrical infrastructure. Investments in the electrical grid are incredibly important. Utah has incredible resources, potential resources for zero carbon energy, whether it's solar, wind, geothermal, and for probably in the future nuclear. But our grid is not well designed for intermittent use of electricity. It turns out right now that wind and solar are our cheapest forms of energy, but where we have to provide dispatchable energy, it's more expensive. We need to have the grid infrastructure that can connect all of these various sources around the state and also with other states. I think another infrastructure we should be talking about is supporting mass transit and supporting transit-oriented design within cities. How do we do zoning? We need to encourage more dense zoning around transit centers and increase our mass transit infrastructure in those areas. And I think the other biggest infrastructure need we have is in water efficiency. We have a major, climate change is causing major warming and drying in the Southwest. We've had 2 good snow years, but that was preceded by 20 years of drought. In my years on the Summit County Council, I would meet with the Farm Bureau in Summit County every spring. And I remember the spring before the drought broke with the first big snow year. Our farmers out there had been culling their herds because they didn't have enough either water or forage for them. And now we're seeing the effects on the Great Salt Lake, but also on the Colorado River. 7 of the counties in the district are in the Colorado River Basin, and the other 4 feed water into the Great Salt Lake. How do we transfer water from agricultural uses and not put farmers out of business? Part of it is going to be, I think, irrigation optimization. But then what happens to that extra water? Does the farmer just irrigate more land? We have to have a mechanism to bring that water either to the Great Salt Lake or into the Colorado River. The Colorado River is going to be a big issue that's going to have to be settled either by negotiations next year between the 7 Colorado Basin states, or by the end of next year, I think the federal government will come down and say, okay, this is your allocation. And then what do? We have to have a mechanism to get that water into either the Colorado River or into the Great Salt Lake. And the additional infrastructure we need there is, if you think about how you use water in your home, number one, we need to stop growing grass. But the water that comes into your tap all goes out to the sewer. And if we can fix the leaks in our underground water supplies and our sewer systems, virtually all of that water can travel to the Great Salt Lake or into the Colorado River to be used by downstream users for other purposes. And you can reuse that water multiple times in that case. But that's going to require investments, investments in fixing leaks, but also improving our sewers, our water treatment plants. Snyderville Basin Water Reclamation District facilities in Summit County have what is known as tertiary water treatment. You get drinking quality water out of the far end of the sewer system in the Snyderville Basin. And it's the only thing that keeps East Canyon Creek wet during a really dry summer.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your response there. The next question I have for you is about immigration. It seems that Congress has been at an impasse. No one's stepping up with solutions or ideas, and it makes one wonder if solutions are even possible. Where would you start if you could solve the immigration challenge, and what do you think your role as one of 400 voices in the U.S. House of Representatives would be?
I think there's three general areas that have to be addressed with immigration. One of them was being addressed in this last session of Congress with the border security bill. And that was then killed because of the presidential campaign. We had a reasonable compromise on border security. But border security by itself will not solve the problem. We have to stop. What is the motivation for people to come here and find their way into the U.S. to work? People are not coming here to get on U.S. welfare. They're coming here to work. There are desperate situations in Latin America that are driving people, and from all over the world, actually. You've got climate change drying out in certain parts of the hemisphere. You've got criminal issues. You've got governments, inefficient governments in many areas. And they're all driving people families in desperation to try to get to a place where they can support their families better. But that's been the history of our country for our entire history. All four of my grandparents were very poor immigrants in the first decade of the 1900s. My mother's family came from Tsarist Russia before World War I. My grandfather built a house that still sits in Paterson, New Jersey, 934 square feet. And they had 9 kids, 11 people living in that house. And that's what I see when I knock on doors in immigrant neighborhoods here. You see at least 2 families living in 2-bedroom apartments. And they're here to work. They are vital to our economy. The thought that we might deport millions and millions of people here, it's both inhumane and they are contributing to our economy greatly. Our economy would crash if we did that. So we have to find some way to regularize the work ability of the people that are already here. Some of these people who have walked for months through some desperate situations to try to get into our country just to have the opportunity to work. I know that I live in Park City, and our resort economy would crash. Beds would not be made, meals would not be served, grass would not be cut, snow would not be plowed in our community if those people were deported. I'm on the American Legion up there, and we give scholarships out to the kids from Park City High School. And about 8 or 9 years ago, we gave scholarships to Boise State to 2 DACA recipients. And one of them I've kept in contact with, graduated from the University of Utah. He wanted to be a policeman. He was a translator for the Park City Police Department for many years, but because he's not a citizen, he couldn't go to post. So now he's working for an immigration reform agency, partially in the Western United States and partially in D.C. Those are the kind of people we need to build our country. So we need to massively increase our legal immigration and give these people an opportunity to come in. And it's not going to be just workers, construction workers and resort workers and agricultural workers. We need those desperately. Our industries in Utah will crash without those people. But also, scientists and engineers. We have students that come in, and if they can't get a job within 6 months of graduating from the university, they have to go home. We've educated them here. They've come here to some of the best universities in the world. Why are we kicking them out? We need comprehensive immigration reform that legalizes people who have come here and are working in our community, have not gotten in legal trouble, and in our university students. But we also have to, certainly in this hemisphere, try to fix some of the problems that are driving people here. If we don't fix the motivation, we're not going to stop illegal immigration. And to do that, we're going to have to start enforcing immigration in the workplace. We don't do that. We don't do that because we can't. We can't afford to do it. We need these people here. In my years working in the U.S. and in the insurance industry, I saw numerous companies that I visited that had large illegal, undocumented workforces. And those people were frequently being abused. Unsafe workplaces, unable to put in workers' compensation claims. We need a more humane and just system, but it's also incredibly important for our economy. To go one step further, if you look at our national debt, the biggest issue we have with national debt going forward is our entitlements. If you read the report from the Social Security trustees, if we have 3 workers for every retiree in the U.S., we're good. No deficit going forward. Right now we're at 2.8, and we're going down to 2.2 in the next 10 to 20 years. We need a much larger flow of good people coming to this country, as we have had during our entire history. That's how my family came here. My grandparents all came here dirt poor. My parents and my aunts and uncles' generation, they all made it to the middle class. And most of us in my generation went to college.
Glenn, shifting gears here, want to talk a little bit about tax policy. What changes to federal tax policies would you implement to make Utah more attractive to businesses, but also balance that with the public services that are so important to us?
Yep. Well, I would say number one, federal tax policy. I don't think I will be doing anything that's specifically targeted at Utah unless somebody here comes and tells me, oh, we got a special good deal here we need you to work on in the federal government. But from an overall standpoint, number one, there's a proposal from one of our presidential candidates, who you'll guess, on major tariffs. Tariffs are an incredibly bad idea. If I'm elected to Congress, I will oppose those. Yeah, the president has a lot of ability to impose tariffs, but Congress has the ability to remove them. And certainly that would be something I would be very interested in doing. Free trade works very well. Now, there are certain areas where certain things like tariffs or banning certain types of products can be targeted where we see specific abuses. For instance, the Chinese economy now is really built on exports, and they subsidize their export industries dramatically, more than other countries do. Tariffs could be a partial option there, but it's not a good one. On our part, it's probably better to either ban the products or subsidize our products here to even the playing field. But I think the biggest thing we need to do is we need to change our tax policy. We've had about 40 years or so of trickle-down economics and supply-side economics that has created a massive transfer of wealth from the lower and middle classes to the upper classes. We now have, I think, over 800 billionaires in the United States that have, took some notes here, 6.2 trillion in wealth amongst them. We have to fix the demand side of the economy with our tax system. If people don't have enough money to buy the goods that can be produced, there's no market for those goods. So I think we have to use our tax system to provide the necessities of life for people. And by that I mean, let's see if we can improve our education system, both at the primary and secondary and higher education, vocational training. And that improves individual productivity. Improving individual productivity improves their ability to earn money and improve our economy. And then building, we talked about infrastructure earlier, using money for infrastructure. That improves society's productivity. The more productivity we have from individuals in our society in general, the more successful our economy will be. We also have to talk about how do we tackle the national debt. Social Security, I talked about a little bit before. Immigration reform can help that. But at the present rate, we're going to be cutting Social Security benefits by 2033. If we remove the cap on Social Security taxation, which is now currently at $160,000, we drive that out to 2046 and we get a chance to fix the rest of the system. But then within our normal budgeting process, back around 2000, we had a balanced budget. We were actually driving towards a surplus. Part of that was false because we were also building up the Social Security surplus at that time. We're putting money into the bank. But at any rate, we had a system called pay-as-you-go at the time. So we have to have budgeting processes for our discretionary budget. If you want something new, you got to pay for it. Either you got to cut somewhere else, or you have to raise taxes. And as I said before, we've got 800 billionaires that I think can probably kick in a little bit more to our economy.
Well, thank you. I think we maybe have about a minute left. Is there anything in the final minute you want to share that you haven't addressed with our business community?
Oh, boy, we can talk about lots of things, but I think, most of all, I think this session is not about me. It's about you. The Salt Lake Chamber is a very influential public body in this state. And we have a fork in the road here in this election. We can go down a road where we're led by racists and potential dictators, or we can go down a road where we can improve our economy, improve our environment, and improve the economy of Utah. Our natural resources here in the for a zero carbon economy, Utah can be a massive energy exporter to the rest of the country and certainly the Southwest. And we can develop that very easily, I believe, with the right leadership. Leadership at both the federal and our state level needs to be improved, and you guys can have an effect on that if you suggest people vote for the right people and pressure the people in our legislature to do the right thing. Again, I'll go back to something I said in the beginning. The Chamber was very influential in establishing the Utah Compact. I think it's up to you now to call out the people who are going completely against the concepts in that very fine document.
Thank you for being with us here today, Mr. Wright. We thank you for your candidacy, for sharing your perspectives. As the daughter of a Vietnam vet, I thank you for your service to our country and the tours you did there.
That concludes our District 3 Candidate Forum. We want to thank both of our candidates for being here, for all your dedication to the people of Utah, and we wish you the best of luck in the upcoming election.
Our thanks also go out to the Salt Lake Chamber and to Salt Lake Chamber member Pixum for producing and streaming today and our other forums. Thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.